All right, thank you all. All right, so full screen. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about a little bit about the past, and then some current efforts and a vision for the next CloudLaunch as a collaborative effort between the Genomics Virtual Lab and the Galaxy projects, which, being located on two different sides of the world, actually enables for a 24-hour development. So I think, it's been mentioned that Galaxy is about 10 years old, and so is cloud computing. So it emerged back several years ago, or quite a few years ago, via Amazon. And I find it kind of interesting that other than the Jetstream talk, this is the only other technical talk that talks about cloud computing. However, there's been quite a number of mentions, in my opinion, about sort of the use of cloud as a casual thing every day. And that's what we're striving towards, or have been over the last several years and going forward. So it all sort of started up with when we came up with the idea of the Galaxy on the cloud, and that came fairly soon after clouds started seeing some adoption. And the idea behind this project was that we take individual groups, individual researchers, give them their own instances of Galaxy, run them on the back end, a set of cloud machines, and they have full customizability and flexibility in terms of the compute and tools that are installed. But there was still some technical challenges early on, and so a year later we simplified the launch process. So instead of going through this fairly tedious and laborious effort of clicking, 20, 30 things, composing a couple of files, text files, and then hoping our machine comes up properly configured, we came up with this single form that allowed you to do the same in a few seconds, basically. And that was the birth of what today is called the CloudLaunch, and it's sort of the bulk of what I'm going to talk about today. And time kept on going, and sort of we evolved from being an Amazon-centric solution to becoming a more cloud-agnostic solution, and then not being so much Galaxy-centric anymore, but realizing that there are jobs and tasks that people do on a daily basis that span outside of Galaxy. And so came up with this idea of the Genomics Virtual Lab with the University of Melbourne to create a workbench in the cloud. So instead of, along with Galaxy, you had access to all these other tools that were useful and sort of facilitated the portions of the analysis beyond what was feasible in Galaxy at the time. Along with that, there was a number of tutorials that was developed to create an ecosystem for people to live in an entirely cloud-contained world. And then another couple of years passed. We had some experience with clouds other than Amazon, but clouds all of a sudden started popping up all over the world. So this is a map from a few months ago of the commercial ones commercial and a few academic clouds that I'm aware of. And you can see there's a dot in just about every corner of the world. And so with our capacity, I guess, or desire to make cloud computing accessible to bioinformaticians, we ran up against the challenge of how do we actually keep things in sync and remain available in all these regions around the world. And so just like Nate was talking about automating things and keeping things consistent, we've migrated all of our deployment strategies to Ansible, and so the whole build process with deploying a cloud system, and there was a workshop, the second training day of the conference. You kind of see that there's a lot of moving parts to make this happen. But Ansible really comes to the rescue, and it's phenomenal actually now in that you can deploy something in basically a matter of hours, as long as the first initial bump is taken care of making sure that everything runs with new versions. And so what we ended up, or where we stand at this minute, is that if we look at this chart, this slide from the top, you have a number of clouds, and a number of these launchers have sort of popped up a little bit around the world. that a user now has a choice as to, do I go here? Do I take an instance of the GVL? Do I take an instance of Galaxy? Is this version of Galaxy available in this environment and not? And so there's a number of questions, and everything below that is just a black box. It just things hopefully work. On the bottom end, so from our perspective of developing these systems, we're having all these different clouds, all these different regions for within a cloud, and each of them tends to have just a slightly different tooling required to make it actually work the way to make things happen. And so we have to convert that black box into white box and expose all those little details in a system that tries to be fairly autonomous once you launch it. And so this is the kind of the idea of the stack that we've come up with and are working towards now. So on the bottom end, we remain sort of cloud agnostic, but where we've created a common library called CloudBridge that supports these mainstream clouds and has a highly uniform and well-tested interface so that anything that runs on top of it can rely on that working. So you basically just develop the library, make sure that whatever it implements, it's working across all of those clouds. We test that with each commit. But again, it's not going to cover all the corner cases and all the little clouds that might pop up around the world. It focuses on mainstream ones that provide sufficient capacity to support an ecosystem such as the one we're working on here. There's our cloud manager in the middle. And then at the top, we have a new version of CloudLaunch. And I'll talk more about that. And so to begin with, we have a paper on CloudBridge in a few weeks at Exceed. So if there's going to be more content coming out on that topic soon. And then and now we're going to sort of spend the rest of the time talking about the top stack, which is the one that an average user of the system would perceive mostly. But another thing that surprised me at this conference and all the talks is that there hasn't been a single live demo of anything that people have talked about. And so I didn't want to break the trend. So instead of making it a demo, we're going to make it a highly experimental feature of seeing if this is going to operate as expected. And to say why it's experimental, because at 4 o'clock this morning, it was still a little flaky when as we were wrapping it up to make it sufficiently functional. So this is now the new CloudLaunch that's going to be available fairly soon, I guess. We created now logins. And so once you log in, you are no longer bound to one application or one version that might be the default available thing, but instead you have a choice. You can launch a standard sort of Galaxy on the cloud. You can launch a standalone VM of Galaxy. You can launch the more comprehensive Genomics Virtual Lab instance, or you can go all the way down and launch basic operating systems that are just as VMs on the supported platform. The interesting sort of thing is that, so today, because we are where we are, and Jetstream, we saw it just a couple of days ago, is around the corner, we'll stick with the standalone VM as the currently only available version of Galaxy in this form. So if we, let's see. So when you choose one of these applications, you're offered a number of choices as to which one you want to launch. So at this point, we've only released one version of it, and then here you have a choice of the clouds. So now, at the moment, this is available on these two. In the future, it'll be available on Amazon as well, and around the other regions around the world. So we'll choose our favorite Jetstream. Name pre-populated at this point. We can choose one of the available instance types that comes from Jetstream. And then we'll look at, so if you choose, this is enough. But if you choose to choose some other more advanced settings, so private networking is one of the common features, and one that we're going to use today because we want to assign this server a public IP of choice. So we'll choose one of them. And heading over to the launch, we now have a view of all of our instances. So in the past, again, when you launched an instance, It was the launch process. You got the target IP of the machine, and that was, you were done with it. Here, you have access to all of your previous launches. As this evolves, you'll be able to relaunch, share, delete all these instances that may exist on any of the available clouds that are configured for this particular instance, all through the same interface without having to move over into another environment. So this one said it'll probably take a couple minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to sort of explore other features of the site. So you also have an option of storing your credentials that can be used by default across all of the clouds that you have access for, again, optionally. And one of the but the other thing that that has kind of come out of this entire conference is that the cloud has really become an average infrastructure that a person uses. And so we don't want to think of this as purely, I want to launch on a cloud and I'm on a well-aware fact that I'm running on a cloud. We want to sort of think of all of the galaxies as just being cloud galaxies that supply functionality. One model being you have to deploy your own to be able to customize it and all that. And so with that, we've added this tab that talks about the public appliances, and this is a direct result of Remy's work at the hackathon. Actually, this page was blank 2 days ago, and today it lists public Galaxy instances that are available around the world, and you have them in a geographically sort of placed manner, so that you can choose whether you want something local or not. In the meantime, hopefully our system has launched. So the one we just launched a couple of minutes ago. And if we go there, there's our Galaxy on Jetstream. Ready to go. Thanks. All right, so a little more sort of underlying principles of what we just saw. So one is that what we saw is a templated model of systems instances and types of bioinformatics platforms that we've configured over the last couple of days. But the idea is that you can now expand this with any application. So as this evolves over the coming months, you as a user will be able to say, I want to store my own configuration as a launchable item on that page. And so you can change the configurations. So each time you can have default configs, so to launch every time with 500 gigs, or to launch from this particular instance share, and so on. Two, the interface that we just saw is highly modular and extensible. And I'll talk more about that in an example, but the idea is that you or somebody developing applications wanting to deploy their applications on a cloud in this manner can develop a fairly small component in JavaScript and upload it to the site to allow custom interfaces for launching those apps. So I didn't show that, but yeah, I'll show that. So back here, if we look at the for example, so we looked at the Galaxy standalone VM. If we look at the Galaxy CloudMan option, well, hold on, it keeps logging in. When you choose a version, you're given a number of options that are pertinent to that particular type of machine. In this case, that basically being a password and a choice of an instance. But if you choose Genomics Virtual Lab as a target platform, after you've selected the version and the cloud of choice, you're given all the same settings that we've seen earlier, plus the GVL-specific settings. So getting back to sort of the theoretical talk of what this enables is to say that you can extend on what others have built in these interfaces and just complement it with some of the features of the application that you're working on. And ultimately, so it's natively multi-cloud because of the Cloud Bridge layer that we've built on the bottom of this. And as of today, OpenStack, Clouds, and Amazon is supported, and Google Compute Engine is under development. And so technically, we have the Cloud Bridge layer at the bottom. So we've kind of opted for modern cutting-edge technologies, but ones that are fairly well known around the world and have a wide wide audience. So this is Django backed, so people that know Django can easily go in and change things as they need to. I'm sorry, wrong way. And Angular at the top, which allows us to do these modular and runtime dependent components. So when you look at for example, so these are each pluggable components, Cloud Mensing being the basic one for launching a cluster in the cloud, and then Galaxy or the Genomics Virtual Lab ones just wrap that one to provide additional functionality specific to that application. And so what does that actually look like in terms of code? Well, this is all of the sort of the page content that's required to write the GVL component. So you have the GVL specific options. Primarily was the two checkboxes, whether you wanted to instantiate the command line tools and the smart portal. So basically just a couple of checkboxes. And everything else that comes with launching it, choosing the instance type, choosing the cloud, choosing all those advanced settings like the network and whatnot, comes through that single component loading that's contained within the one that's already been written like this for CloudMan. So if somebody wants to now extend the GVL model, they would just include the GVL, for example, and add a couple more lines of code. And so going forward, we've been cloud-centric. We have a lot of experience with the cloud over the last 6-7 years, and so we've started down this path. But ultimately, everything is converging with Docker, and it'd be a short talk if I didn't mention Bjorn and all the efforts that he's done in terms of getting the various flavors of Galaxy running, and instead of trying to replicate all of this just for individual clouds and all, in the next, hopefully by next GCC, all this will run using Docker containers instead of native implementations for service management. And so I'd like to sort of just say thank you to all the organizations that are supporting this effort over the last 6 months or so that's been underway. And but more specifically, I'd like to say thank you to Nuwan, who prior to the conference, you can see that huge bump in developing this piece, trying to get this ready. So as I was working on the slides and no code, he was working on the code to make sure that demo went as well as it did. And then Remy helped in getting that really neat, prominent map and uniting all of the galaxies that exist around the world in one place. So thank you. And to start the questions, I have one for you. So there was a term up here called appliances as a way to denote sort of something more than an application, because it's really more like a system. And so is this clear? Raise your hand if you think this is good, or if not, would application have been better? Service? No opinion? Instances? Yeah, it's things running on clouds, maybe Docker soon. But yeah, sorry, so first, appliances, hands, services, instances. I think appliances wins. It's the best choice since it's implemented. Any other questions?